Welcome to another episode of Euphoric, the podcast. And today we're going to talk about why success coaching done the right way is so freaking powerful, both as a modality that you apply in your life and that you can help other people with. Now, we have a lot of misnomers about what success really looks like in our society and what even success coaching might look like. We can think of, money and status and significance as measures of success and achieving your goals, which obviously there might be something to do with that as well. But then we also look at success coaching that only teaches you how to, hold someone to SMART goals or, check in with them and help them be accountable. And I think it goes well beyond that. And in today's episode, I really want to break down why this one thing that more people are missing in their lives is actually the most important thing that you can not only find for yourself, but also help people with that. What is that one thing? Meaning, a sense of meaning. Meaning is probably one of the most important qualities we can have to ensure that we lived a fulfilled life, to ensure that we lived a life of purpose. And a recent study from Harvard University found that 3 out of 5 adults completely lacked a sense of meaning in their lives. In fact, another study from Gallup found that 85% of adults find their jobs meaningless. Now, this is not a good thing because without a sense of meaning, we literally crash. We literally are not able to live the big, beautiful life that we came to this planet to live. In fact, I'm just doing a recent series on my Instagram where I'm bringing up the high caliber women of the 5X certification program. Their wins are so tremendous. The life that they're living is so big. They're, being featured in Times Square and signing clients and writing books. And I'm just so proud of all of them. But what I really love to hear, that 180, is not only how they went alcohol free, because that's the common denominator between us all, but also how they were able to inject such a sense of meaning and purpose into their lives in the entrepreneurial path, because it is such a lacking thing. Now, there's a very famous book by Viktor Frankl called A Man's Search for Meaning. And Viktor Frankl was a psychologist whose peers were people like Freud and Carl Jung. But he was of Jewish heritage, and when World War II blew out, it wasn't a happy ending for him. Him and his family were taken to a concentration camp. The Nazis completely destroyed all of his work. But from that vantage point, even though he lost everything, he was able to start recognizing and applying his work in the real world. Now, he already was studying meaning as a psychologist, but he decided to really test his theory in the concentration camp itself. And he started noting and picking apart who is going to survive and who isn't surviving. What gives people a sense to live even when they're facing the harshest circumstances possible of their lives. And he noticed that it was only the people who had a sense of meaning of what they were going through that actually had the will to survive. And this held across so many, people that he encountered and throughout the war experience. Now, sadly, he lost everybody in the concentration camps. He lost his family, he lost his wife, he lost all of his published work, and he got out and he survived himself, and he decided that he was going to devote the next half of his life to building up his psychological principles. And he wrote A Man's Search for Meaning shortly thereafter, and it's probably one of the most best-selling books of our time. And it really goes into this concept of why meaning is so important for humans and why without it, we literally perish and we feel like we lived really small lives living for other people. Now, why is this so important? Like I said, 85% of people find their job meaningless. 3 out of 5 adults find no sense of meaning in their lives. And we have a huge crisis when it comes to drinking in the first place. Now, I believe we are completely conditioned into drinking. What that means is we're programmed into this ritual from the larger society. This means that we get a sense of belonging and our needs met through the culture of drinking. It's positioned to us as this way to experience adulthood, as a way to prove ourselves, as a way to be accepted, as a way to show our independence and rebelliousness. It's a way to show that we're sophisticated or glamorous or we have status in our society. I think you have to live under a rock to not fall under this programming, right? Like, it is just going to be natural. And you can just see it in the difference. Like, imagine that we lived in an alien planet where alcohol was never invented. You wouldn't have that culture there. You wouldn't be programmed to drink. Nobody's just born with this desire to drink alcohol. It's completely socialized into us. It is an alcohol program. And obviously the alcohol industry makes a lot of money from it. And they have devised ways to make their programming and the culture as strong as possible. There's investigative journalism that's proven that, and around the time of the 80s or so, 80s or 90s, the alcohol industry sat down together, the big head honchos, and asked themselves, how can we explicitly market our product to women to get way more women drinking? And at that time, men drank more than women, the consumption levels were really different, and they put a lot of money, a lot of, thinking behind it, and they created a culture where, to keep up with the guys, a woman has to prove her her power through the ability to drink. They created a culture of mommy juice. They created a culture that women deserve to be able to let loose with some wine after all the hard things they do throughout the day. This was actually orchestrated by the alcohol industry. And it's just insane to see that most of us are not living lives of free will or ability to make our own choices. We're always getting programmed by the society around us. However, let me get back to my original point with meaning. I think that even though that is what is largely driving us to, go into alcohol in the first place and just get into that habit and that culture, is there's something deeper going on in our souls as well at the same time. Our souls notice that we are not living the life that we were put on this planet to live. And in order to stay comfortable with the fact, in order to not feel a complete existential crisis with that fact, alcohol numbs us from the fact that we're not living the life that we're meant to live. And we probably don't know this consciously. Consciously, we're just doing what everyone else is doing. We're drinking on the weekend like everyone else. We're picking up a bottle of wine after a stressful day. We're taking clients out for drinks and, it all feels very normal in the conscious mind. But I think subconsciously, deeper down, a part of us knows you were meant to live such a bigger life than this. And it's so easy to continue a drinking habit, and even especially when your intuition is telling you you are made for more than this, miracles will happen in your life when you let this go. It's easy to cling to that alcohol because it's the only way that our soul knows how to cope with not living in its grandeur. Which is why it's so important when you decide to reevaluate alcohol and take breaks, go alcohol-free, whatever that looks like for you, to actually answer the question for yourself, how do I feel a sense of fulfillment and meaning? Because for so long, alcohol was the shortcut. And let's not, misconstrue what I'm saying. Obviously, alcohol does not give you a sense of meaning or fulfillment, but it does give you immediate gratification in the moment. And it makes you stop asking the question in the first place to just settle and be okay with the mediocre existence or the comfort zone or whatever you call it. And so when you keep choosing immediate gratification over and over and over again, your soul's not going to keep asking the bigger questions anymore. So when you come to reevaluate alcohol, all of a sudden it is time to ask these bigger questions. And success coaching, the way I teach it in my 5X certification program, is so much bigger than setting up SMART goals or holding yourself accountable with someone else. It is answering those bigger questions of what gives you a sense of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment. It's so important, this work, to do it on yourself. And when you are a coach and working with other people, it's so important that you can do it for other people as well. Because at the end of the day, this is probably someone's most important question that they can ask that makes their life feel like a life of no regrets at the end of their life. Truly, right? And the thing is that the idea that, our lives have so much potential and that we are able to live big lives of meaning is a newer concept. Like, let's go back in time a little bit. Imagine what your great ancestors were doing during the medieval times. Imagine what they were doing in the 1600s. Just surviving is such a huge part of our DNA. And most paradigms in human thinking were that, some people got really lucky and were born into wealth or into royalty, and everyone else kind of had to just slave away. And that was your life. And that's just what you did, and you made the best with it, right? And this concept started coming around in the 20th century that, the human potential is so much bigger than that. And that it's not just a few lucky people, it's everyone who has these really big untapped gifts, huge untapped gifts. The human potential movement basically says that if one person can do something, all humans can. And this idea that we don't even know how big our potential is until we actually test it. Now, does that mean that you have to do everything under the sun? No. Does that mean that I'm going to be the next basketball player that's winning, games in the NBA? No. Does that mean I want to become an astronaut and go to space? Not necessarily, right? While we can do anything, we also have the free will to choose what we're actually interested in and what actually serves our biggest expression of our purpose on this planet. And so the human potential movement really changes things around, of thinking of humans as way more capable than we think that they are, and that truly they can achieve anything under the sun. Now, here's a problem though, is even though this is a beautiful idea on paper, we're still running with the old programming that is telling us that we need to just survive. Now, I've spoken about this many times on my podcast, but let me say it in a nutshell. There's previous eras where the only question you had was, how do I survive? How do I make it day to day? How do I feed my children? How do I make it past this war? How do I, survive this famine or this depression? There's so many eras of human history where the luxury of deciding what you really, really wanted in life was not something that you were afforded, right? And so what ends up happening is that us today, we are living in that passed down mindset of previous ancestors and the passed down trauma. And so this idea of even knowing what you want is actually pretty rare. Now, you might know what you want because you've been doing the personal development work. I might know what I want because I work with a coach forever. But just imagine if you were to survey 20 people at a grocery store what they truly want most in the world. And I bet you a lot of them couldn't answer that or couldn't answer it authentically. They might be able to answer what society thinks that they should want. So for example, back when I was still drinking, I had wants and desires, but a lot of it was programmed into me based on what other people in my organization wanted. When you go and join an organization, especially at a young age, or a company, and everybody's vying to go up the corporate ladder, everyone's vying for the corner office, it's really hard to stand independent from that. You are going to, absorb all of the same aspirations as the people that you surround yourself with. So do you really want to go up the corporate ladder and get the corner office while you're still working 80 hours a week and barely have any time off to actually enjoy your life? Maybe not, right? But it's really hard to know what you actually want when you, are absorbed by other people's desires, and they probably are just doing what society wants out of them, and everyone's just doing what looks good on paper, and everyone's trying to make their parents proud and not really listening to themselves. And B, when we live in this paradigm of not really believing we can actually have what we want. Because the reason why most people don't actually know what they want is because they don't believe they can have it. And this is obvious in so many of our eras in human history where, yes, going after your dreams was almost impossible. I'm reminded of the story of Madam Walker. She's the first African-American millionaire, I think at that time. Actually, the first woman, I think, millionaire, self-made millionaire ever. And she was born either a slave or was the daughter of a slave. I need to double check the story. But she was living in a time where there was absolutely no economic mobility or freedom for a woman in her position. And she started a hairstyling business and had some products and literally made a huge company where she trained other women in how to, grow their own businesses and put together these salons and stuff like that. And she is like a famous self-made millionaire of that era. Like I'm talking the 1800s, like during the Civil War and stuff. Like I can't even imagine what it was like to try to actually be an entrepreneur at that time as not only a woman, but also a woman of color. Like just impossible odds. But she shows that she did it and she proved to people that it's possible, even in that time. Now, I'm not saying that it was easy, obviously. It was probably really hard, but we can also agree that it's easier now, that we are not living in that same era anymore. And while there's still a lot of injustices and a lot of, inequalities in our world, we do have way more opportunity now today than our ancestors before us. Like I think almost anyone can agree with that sentiment. And so if we have all this opportunity now, we are still, though, being raised by the sentimentality and the paradigms of people who didn't. And so your parents were raised by your grandparents, right? And your grandparents were raised by your great-grandparents. And on and on and on, where this mentality of doing what's smart and what's logical and what you think is going to look good on paper or pay well is passed down from the generation before. So what ends up happening is that what worked for the previous generation is what's taught to the children, the next generation. So for example, in my parents' generation, the smartest thing you could do was become a professional, get a master's degree in some kind of professional field, go work for a corporation, one corporation, do not switch jobs, try to work for one place, get a pension, retire when you're 65, and then you can go see the world after that if you're still healthy. And for a lot of people in that era, that worked. That really did work, right? If you were able to do that, that was the leg up from maybe your grandparents' generation where they were more laborers or, doing things without maybe a college education. So it's just so fascinating to see that we are taught and told what to aspire to, become the lawyer, become the doctor, become the accountant, because that is what worked in the previous generation. And now we're living in an era where that career myth is so exposed. It's impossible to find a stable job that's going to pay your bills for the rest of your life. There's so many layoffs that happen. Jobs are so fickle these days. Getting a pension is unheard of. And even, finding that gives you the sense of purpose and meaning is why so many people think that 85% of people here think that their jobs are meaningless, right? So the path to success changes generation by generation. And oftentimes we're still running our lives by the rules of the past. So there's a huge reason why most people don't know what they want. They don't think that they can have it, and they choose the most logical and the most sensible option anyway. Now, this is so important to recognize because if you not only can break through this yourself, but if you can help other people break through this, it's huge. Because the thing is, a lot of people chase, for example, money. And when you just chase money and accolades without a sense of meaning or a sense of impact, a lot of people get to the top of that mountain and find that it wasn't actually what they wanted. That, I'm not saying money is a bad thing to want. I think we should all heal our money mindsets and become as wealthy as possible to help the world. But when that's the sole pursuit, devoid of any impact, devoid of helping the world, and it's just purely that, so many successful people have reached the top of that mountain and found that it didn't matter, that it was meaningless, and that it was the wrong thing to chase at the end of the day, And I think it happens a lot too in this corporate world where it's just, one carrot after the next. It's like this promotion, and then I'll get this title, and then maybe I'll have more days off. And you just keep chasing this thing, but you never changed what you're really doing to actually feel like you have a sense of meaning in your life. So that there's no question why so many people are devoid of that sense of meaning and purpose in their life. But when you're able to actually use success coaching to not just help someone figure out what they want, but help figure out what their soul and their subconscious really wants. Because again, our conscious surface level answers might not get to the root of what is actually going on inside. And what's interesting about this is when you help someone build a life filled with meaning and purpose, it can look really different case by case. And that's why it's a very personal job to do because, I can't just say that this is the answer for everyone or this is the answer for someone else. You really have to mind someone. You really have to understand what their deeper why is. Now, a lot of people don't know what their deeper why is. So that is a brilliant thing that you do in success coaching as well, is help someone understand what is the thing that makes them wake up? What is the thing that gives them so much sense of resilience and consistency, even in their hardest days? And when you help someone find their deeper why, you lock in the motivation piece. You lock in why they're going to do the hard thing over and over and over again. And it's really cool to see how this works from using assessments, for example. Like I use assessments on my clients where, everyone is different. Everyone has this very unique fingerprint and their own zone of genius and their own way of expressing that into the world. And so again, you can use success coaching as a way to help someone actually find what that unique expression is for them. And I love the power of assessments to do that. And I love the power of even just, peeling back some of the subconscious programming and blocks that make it really hard for someone to truly stand firm in knowing what they want more than anything above else. Now, here's another problem I see happening that we address in success coaching. You know what you want, but you feel guilty for it. So somehow your desire is wrong for you, or it feels selfish, or it feels like it's not going to happen, or it feels really, really hard and scary. So any one of these fears and doubts, even if someone is so tapped into what they want, is going to hold them back And instead of like roaring into the world and going after it with a fierce force, presence, that person is going to cower in the corner and be held back by all these swarming limiting beliefs. And the phenomenon is described really well by psychologist Gay Hendricks. He was on my podcast a few years ago now. He is one of my heroes. Wrote an incredible book called The Big Leap. He has multiple books under his belt. Just a phenomenal man and the work he's created in the world. And he has this theory called the upper limit, which is when you start expanding your sense of success and joy and love, you're always going to hit a cap. You'll always hit a cap of how much you believe you actually deserve. And so when you go alcohol-free, this happens really often because things are starting to get better. You're becoming healthier. You have more energy. You have more drive. You have more ambition. All of a sudden, there's that part of your subconscious that was programmed as a 7-year-old girl that doesn't believe she's worthy, that says, no, 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 we don't deserve more than this. So you get to a place where you're working with clients or yourself, and you know what you want, you know what you stand for, you know what would be like the biggest miracle in your life, but you're held back by all of these fears and these doubts and these questions of, can you really make it? Will this really happen? This scared of being visible in your desires as well. It's like a woman has everyone rooting for her when she's like, I want to be a great mom and I want to help my family. But once she starts talking about huge, audacious goals and dreams of like, I want to change millions of people's lives and I want to make, boatloads of money doing it, all of a sudden she gets looked at sideways. And it is really, really typical for people to not understand these big goals and ambitions. And it's almost as if you're going to talk yourself down from them as well. And so in a nutshell, success coaching is so powerful because not only does it cut through the programming and really determine what someone wants most out of this life, that is going to give them their unique fingerprint for a sense of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment. It's also going to give them the strategies to work through all of the roadblocks that come along the way when you step into that big sense of meaning. It's going to help someone use the science of manifestation and quantum field work, for example, to actually propel their life forward. It's going to use assessments to truly understand how they're motivated, how they're wired, how they actually can achieve the goals moving forward. And it's going to help them tap into the greatest human needs that you could possibly have that are not selfish, that are actually helping you achieve your greatest why and what you came to this planet for, by feeling like a holistic part of something bigger than you as well. So I'm obsessed with it. I am obsessed at the way that I teach success coaching in my 5X certification program because it's really different from how I've seen other people talk about it. It's not just goal setting or like holding someone accountable. It is getting to the root answer of what makes my life meaningful. And I don't know if there's a better question that we could ask ourselves. And what's interesting about that too is it changes. Like what gives you a sense of meaning and purpose will be different in your 20s than in your 30s, than in your 40s, than in your 50s. It's a question that continually begets itself and asks itself of you to answer this question, right? The thing is that we're so busy in our lives that sometimes we don't pause enough to actually answer it. And so you find people who are just running around for decades and eventually get to a point in their life and be like, what did I really do? What did I build? Did this even matter to me? Did I do what I really wanted to do? And so many people lie on that side of regret where they didn't, right? And when it comes to alcohol, alcohol is a way to not have to answer this question. It is a way to keep yourself stuck in that comfort zone and sitting on the sidelines of your own life. So no wonder people feel such a lack of meaning in that lifestyle, and they can numb the fact that they feel a sense of meaning over and over again. So it's just this like numb, it doesn't even describe the word. It's not just numb. You're like in a completely different realm where you can't even access these deeper, feelings of fulfillment and sense of meaning. Because it is a beautiful thing. When you are so tapped into meaning, when you feel like your work and what you're doing on this planet really matters, when you have the deeper why behind you, when you have the conviction in your soul that this is what you were put on this planet to do, when the fears and the doubts don't hold you back anymore, where the universal laws are working on your side, where your subconscious has been reprogrammed in order to truly build the life you want, what can be better than that? This is why I'm so obsessed with coaching. And this is what I teach in my program to other new and aspiring coaches so that they can be the best coaches that they can be. Because a coach isn't just a one technique or one trick pony. It's not just helping someone with one problem or issue in their life. It is this deeper, holistic way of being able to help someone answer the deepest life's questions. So I hope that gave you a good sneak peek into what success coaching really is, how powerful it is when you apply it both to yourself and you're able to use it as a modality in other people's lives. Now, success coaching is one of the 5 modalities that you get certified in my Empowered AF Coach 5X certification program, in addition to subconscious change coach, in addition to alcohol-free empowerment coach, NLP practitioner, and hypnosis practitioner. And we weave it all together so beautifully so that you not only help people step out of outdated habits and patterns, you help them step into a life filled with so much meaning and purpose, and you help them reprogram their subconscious mind so that their identity is shifted forever. Like, this truly is, to me, the most compelling work you could do. And while, yes, I love money wins, I love it when women are claiming a seat at the table, when they are, rewriting their money stories. I think, though, at the end of the day, what we do is so much bigger than that. I think that the lives that we change is so impactful, and the fact that we can make a lot of money in it is like the cherry on top. And it just gives such a deeper why to what you're doing. Not only can you be well paid, not only can you, live a life of your passions, do work that you really, really care about, that you're so interested in, but also that is just the crowning jewel that you have that deep sense of meaning as well. I mean, you don't get to your end of the life feeling regrets living a life like that. You just don't. So if you want to have a sneak peek in this, I, encourage you to book a call with me for my 5X certification program. I'm happy to share more how this would work in either your career, whether you're just starting as a coach or you're already adding this to an established brand. And I would love to teach you in this art, in this modality. And it's, again, one of the 5 we teach. You'll become a highly skilled coach in making subconscious changes and being able to help people lose the desire to drink. I mean, how impactful is that in a world where 50% of people are sober curious and actually want to drink less or not at all? Our applications close pretty soon. Our round starts at the very end of April. So if you're listening to this podcast in time, I would definitely scoot on over, go grab the application link. You answer like 3 or 4 questions briefly, and then you and I hop on a call together. And I'm happy to map out your career with you in this space. And then if you're a good fit for the program, we'll invite you in. If you have any other questions, I'm only a DM away at euphoric.af. And I hope this opened your mind as well to one of the most important things we can really build our lives around: meaning. It truly is the thing that gives your life a sense of importance and like you mattered at the end of the day.